Visit licensureexams.com and try our samples completely free of charge.
Welcome, you amazing therapist. Are you ready for the rest of the story? The story behind the change? Before I get started, the changes are so massive I'll have to divide them into several parts. Or you might be here so long you might miss your first therapy session or doing those progress notes you've been putting off. And we wouldn't want that now, would we? I, for one, am going to take a sushi break with Linton at Publix when we're done here. Well, imagine sitting down to take the NCMHCE and realizing that a full section of the exam is testing you on something you have no idea about. It feels like you walked into the wrong exam room, or you're really just still sleeping and are stuck in a bad dream. There's a reason you're just clueless. You've been studying all along for the old exam and not the 2027 NCMHCE. That is exactly the situation thousands of therapists could face if they walk into a testing center in 2027 without knowing what changed. The National Board for Certified Counselors, NBCC, spent the better part of 2024 and 2025 doing something they hadn't done in over a decade. They asked more than 14,000 practicing therapists across every state to describe in granular detail what they actually do as therapists. Not what therapy looked like back in 2019, when the last major work analysis was completed, but what it looks like now, in a new world of telehealth, electronic health records, artificial intelligence progress notes, and rules and regulations of interstate licensure compacts. The findings were organized by the National Work Analysis Task Force, reviewed by their subject matter experts, and officially approved on November 4, 2025 as a brand new content outline. That outline has become the foundation of the NCMHCE starting summer 2027, and it is substantially different from what came before. And believe me, we've been working on this new exam every day since 2025. So we're ready to help prepare students who will be taking the new exam in 2027. New narratives, audio, video content, infographics, and keeping up with the changes, and AI tutors that will be peppered throughout the counselingexam.com site. And you can bet your bottom dollar that what they've done is not only some minor adjustment. This is the major structural change to the NCMHCE since the exam moved to its current narrative format. If you're planning to test on or after summer 2027, you really need to get your act together. Let's talk about the good news. What stayed the same? Before we talk about what's going to throw you for a loop, let's ground you in what hasn't changed, because it's a lot. And it's important you don't throw out the baby with the bathwater. The clinical foundations haven't moved. DSM-5 TR diagnostic criteria are still at the center of everything. You still need to know mood disorders, anxiety disorders, trauma and stressor-related disorders. And make sure you also know personality disorders, substance use disorders, psychotic disorders, and neurodevelopmental disorders inside and out. And by the way, no, you can't take your DSM into the exam with you. And unlike Linton, who's held on to his ratty DSM-5, you need to be using the DSM-5 TR, or you're going to lose points on the exam. Risk assessment is still central, identifying suicidal ideation, assessing lethality, safety planning, and duty to warn haven't gone anywhere. The biopsychosocial model is still a framework for intake and assessment. And that pesky mental status exam, it's still there, and yep, you'll need to know the definitions and implications of terms it uses. Core counseling theories, CBT, DBT, ACT, person-centered therapy, Adlerian, psychodynamic, solution-focused, narrative, motivational interviewing should form the backbone of your clinical knowledge. How about primal scream therapy? Unless you were around in the 60s, you probably have no clue what that was. Don't fret, it's gone the way of bell bottoms and tie-dye miniskirts. But do be up to date on SMART goal development, informed consent, HIPAA, confidentiality, therapeutic alliance, group facilitation skills, psychoeducation, and crisis intervention. Here's the key. What the 2027 exam has done is to take all the foundation material you learned back in graduate school, injected it into a matrix where the whole is greater than the sum of its parts, and overlaid it with the question, are you ready to do therapy in the real world of 2027 and beyond? And the answer to that question probably requires more than knowledge and procedures that you currently use. Okay, I know I've got your attention if you're taking the exam in 2027 and perhaps you're a little bit more motivated to take it soon before the change. Let's start with the biggest structural change to the 2027 exam, the new domain architecture. The most immediate visible change in the 2027 exam is how the content is organized. The current exam uses 6 broad-numbered domains. The new exam keeps 6 domains but reorganizes them into lettered subdomains, 1A, 1B, 2A, 2B, 3A, and 3B, alongside 3 more standalone domains for the remaining content areas. This might sound like a filing system change dreamed up by some out-of-control librarian, but it isn't. It signals something important about how the exam thinks. When any domain gets broken into A and B halves, it means the exam writers have decided these 2 areas are distinct enough and important enough to be measured separately. It means more targeted questions. It means you can't blur the lines between, say, treatment planning and continuity of care, or between intake processes and assessment instruments, and guess for the best. Here is how that reorganization plays out across each domain. Here is Domain 1. Professional development and counselor self-awareness. The pre-2027 exam groups professional practice and ethics into a single domain worth about 15% of scored items. The 2027 exam splits this into 2 distinct subdomains, and the split is philosophically meaningful. Domain 1A covers your outward-facing professional life, seeking supervision, completing continuing education, developing knowledge of evidence-based interventions, advocating for clients in the profession. And this next section is brand new, engaging in training on the ethical and legal use of artificial intelligence. Yes, you heard me right, artificial intelligence, and that's a first in counseling exam history. And those of you who've been resistant or holdouts on the subject of AI need to let go of your Luddite predispositions. But I'll go into detail about that later on. Domain 1B covers your inward-facing professional life, and this is where the 2027 exam gets considerably more specific than its predecessor. Counselor self-awareness is now a named subdomain with its own long task list. That list includes addressing your compassion fatigue potential, assessing your exposure to vicarious trauma, recognizing when you need specialized training, assessing your strengths and limitations, maintaining appropriate boundaries, practicing self-care, and practicing self-reflection. The foundational knowledge behind this domain also explicitly includes transference and countertransference within the therapeutic relationship, professional scope and limitations, and power dynamics in the counseling relationship. So, why does this matter for how you study? Because the current exam tends to treat self-awareness as a one-time check occurrence, asking if you are aware of your biases at the start of treatment. However, the 2027 exam treats it as an ongoing issue in your clinical practice. When you see a narrative question involving termination, diagnosis delivery, a trauma disclosure, or a shift in treatment plan, you should be asking yourself, is this question testing domain 1B? Is the issue here a concern of the therapist's internal process rather than just an external clinical decision? I guess that's enough slice of the pie for one sitting. I'll tell you more of what you need to know to pass the new 2027 exam and the current exam as well in the next podcast. As always, thanks for stopping by. And remember, it's in there.